Hello, welcome back. Wanted to take this time today to talk about a blast from the past. I like old guns, and I happen to have one here that has a heck of a lot to do with some of our modern technology, and this is the great Remington Model 8. Um, I've had this for a while, but lately a lot of things in the news have been going on about assault weapons and banning this type of rifle and that type of rifle and this type of cartridge and whatnot. And then, of course, the firearm industry continues to grow and develop, and you get new things that make you think that something from yesterday might not be any good. And so, from a hunting perspective, I just wanted to take a look at this particular rifle because it's really nostalgic. It's a solid figure in our history, and I think that anybody who comes across one should really add it to their collection. It's a quality made rifle, and it definitely serves a very useful purpose. So let's get into this here. This was manufactured by Remington between 1906 and 1931 for its initial production. After that, it morphed into the Model 81, and that went on into production until 1950, in the 1950s. Um, the This is might look familiar to you. Yep, this is definitely a humpback. So no, Remington did not violate the patent from John Browning. They actually were licensed the patent from John Browning to manufacture this rifle. Um, John Browning patented this in 1900, and the first production went in 1906. This model here, I believe, was made in 1914, and it still runs as true as it most likely did back then. Um, this rifle was created for multiple purposes, but is primarily a sporting arm. This does have heritage and lineage in the law enforcement community, in the outdoor community, and I guess back in this time period, you wouldn't say personal protection, but you'd say probably home or ranch defense sector of the market. Um, when this first came out, so this is the first commercially available semi-automatic sporting rifle. It's easy to handle. It carries very nicely. It comes up to the shoulder very naturally. And with this peep sight that I've added, that didn't come with it. This is, I think it's a Marbles. Nope, that's a Lyman. That's a Lyman adjustable peep. It comes up exceptionally fast. And you keep both eyes open so you get a wide field of view. Nothing blocks, like on a typical buckhorn sight. The buckhorn takes up, a good amount of your sight before you're looking at the front sight. And this just focuses your eye naturally on your front bead. It puts you on target, I think, faster than traditional open sights. It also gives you a longer sight radius, so I find it to be more accurate. Um, this is not very heavy. This is about 7.5 pounds. I know you're probably looking at it, if you're not familiar with it, saying, "Wow, that's got a heck of a bull barrel." Well, actually, this has a sporterized barrel, a sporter weight barrel inside of a barrel shroud. The reason for the barrel shroud is because this is a long recoil system, and so in here is the recoil spring that goes on the outside of the barrel. So how that works is when you fire a round out, the barrel will push back. The whole barrel, see how the action moves? The whole barrel will push backwards, and it will continue to push all the way back, and then it will disconnect from these lugs in the back here. And when the barrel comes up to its operating position, that is when it will eject um, the spent round and cycle another one in there. So it's very unique in that way, in that the whole thing comes back, and this will come all the way down and lock back in here before it goes back up. So it's very unique, and it's really cool to shoot. One byproduct of that, however, is that it kicks a lot. There's definitely some recoil. There is some hard-hitting recoil with this setup, but it has a 5-round non-detachable magazine. You can load it either on top by pushing each round in individually, or if you have stripper clips, there's a gap right there in the back of the action here, and that's carved out for your stripper clip. Now, the strip clips for this are exceptionally rare right now. Well, they've been rare for quite a while, and I think one clip you could probably anywhere between 75 and 125, maybe even more dollars per clip. So so I don't have one, or multiple for that matter. But in my experience, loading it by hand works just fine. Absolutely no problems whatsoever. When this came out, this was chambered for 25 Remington, 30 Remington, 32 Remington, and 35 Remington. This one here is a 35 Remington, and we'll talk about that cartridge in a moment. The 25 was really just a varmint caliber, but the 30 and 32 and up, that was all for deer size type game and dangerous game. Manufacturers would market these to whomever they thought, you know, it would be best suited for. And some features of this gun, this particular model, make it very appealing to mountain men, people on ranches, people who were going to be in dangerous country. With a 35 caliber bullet, as you can see in this advertisement here, Remington was really going after that kind of adventurous guy out in the Wyoming wilderness, Montana mountains, in Alaska, someplace where he might have dangerous game encounters. If you Google other Remington Model 8 imagery, you'll see a lot of them have to do with some guy getting surprised by a very large, dangerous looking grizzly bear. So that was no surprise, and no, it was very intentional that they wanted people to think that this was an absolute game stopper for big and dangerous game. But one thing that makes this way ahead of its time, and I think unique, is that it is compact, but it can be even more compact. And so if you look at many of our rifles of today, be it the AR platform or others, being able to take a gun down and pack it away easily for survival purposes is something that's becoming, and has been for a while now, very appealing. When you find a Winchester Model 94 takedown carbine, right? You can find a regular Winchester 94 $700, $1,500, right? When you get a takedown carbine, you're in the multiple thousands of dollars. They're very rare, and they're very sought after. People like that ability to take them down. At this time, so like I said, this was started manufactured in 1906. The takedown feature has always been there. But as far as I know, the other takedown rifle of the time that was popular was the Savage 99 lever action. Clearly, this platform was designed to compete with the lever actions of the time, and to give sportsmen an advantage, so you didn't have to manually cycle your action, right? So they wanted to have a big caliber and a variety of calibers, but this particular one, a big caliber that was good downrange, also good up close, but that you could use without having to do anything other than using your finger to cycle the action, right? So back to my point about the takedown. So if you're if you were just a camper, or if you were going out in dangerous country, you needed both hands free. If you were mountain climbing or whatnot, it was very easy. It was very easy to simply take the forend off. Built in, you didn't have any tools. It's all tool free. You can't beat it, right? But you do want this on nice and tight. Okay, so don't go too far, you scratch things. But so your takedown lever is right here, just spins around. So once you get it going, it's pretty simple to take the rest of it out. This is all self-contained. The screw on the stock here is also self-contained, so it's not gonna fall out. And then this will just simply lift out. And this makes it really handy now to pack, to clean, to maintain. This is really the only breakdown that you need. You can't take out the magazine, at least not without some tools, pushing out pins. So you wouldn't want to do that anyway. But that's pretty nice. I haven't tried it, but I'm sure you could modify perhaps a Ruger 1022 type of a case or backpack or something like that on the market currently. You could probably modify that to fit this in there. And then it goes back together just as easily. Once you get down there and you can't twist it anymore by hand, you're not done yet. You still want to make sure you get a good, nice tight lock on there. As far as it going back into your stock, there's just a hole in the stock. It goes right in there. Make sure it mates up really nice there. Push this back in, and it'll go in there. Get that in good and solid. This is not a sling swivel, and this should never be used as a sling swivel. This was simply put on there so you can get a good positive grip with gloves on in order to take off your stock and take the firearm apart. There is a screw. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but it's right in the it's in the barrel shroud right here. A very small screw. That is where you would put in a front swivel mount, and then you'd have to add one down here. You could probably use this bottom screw for the butt plate there. Otherwise, you'd have to put one in, yourself, or have a gunsmith do that for you. But you would never put a sling on here. Okay, if you come across one of these and somebody is selling one, right, and they do have a sling attached to that, you're going to want to make sure that you go through that very thoroughly and make sure it's not broken, because this is not meant at all to bear any kind of weight, especially not from carrying a rifle, and it's not even comfortable. You wouldn't be able to get that over your shoulder. I mean, it's way too low considering how high it should be. That's way too low. So, but no, it's a great handy feature to be able to take this rifle down and to be able to pack it along like that. It does have a tradition. Well, I don't know if it's traditional or not, but safety. This is just a regular slide safety. It's very similar to that of an AK-47 or variant. What's also nice about that is that it keeps your finger on the receiver where it belongs. This is nice because your finger is just always up there. It doesn't have to be anywhere else. And it's very positive. You can hear it. You know when it's on. You know when it's off. So this is on, and that's off. Very common sense. It's very ergonomic. But it's very good because you can use it with your gloves. You're not futzing around for it. While by today's standards that might be very loud for deer hunting, especially given the close range and proximity that the rifle was designed for. The user will always know when you hit something with it. So if you're walking through the brush and you're looking around, you'll know that you bumped into a branch or your hand bumped it or whatever, and that it's not on safety anymore. So you'll know that, and you'll be able to be more conscious of your own safety. So that's pretty much it. Oh, while this does have a fixed magazine, in later years it did come with the option of a detachable magazine. This is a 5-round magazine. Law enforcement was able to order these. I believe those were 20-round magazines, but they stuck out pretty far down here. If you can get your hands on one of those from either the LA Sheriff's Department or others that have since released those, they're worth quite a bit of money. You'll either luck into one at a heck of a steal, or you're going to be paying quite a bit for it. But they're definitely they're great. They're definitely historic. They are stamped with the department in many cases on the actual action itself. Speaking of the action, the sight system on here, so you can see on here that obviously this is a top loading system, right? So if you're going to use stripper clips, you're going to be putting those in from the top. The ejection is also happens up on that direction. It throws them out upward and away. This metal is very thin, so you don't want to be screwing stock sight mounts, scope mounts into here. On this one, it's primarily accepted in the collector's community anyway for these rifles to be drilled and tapped down in the lower part of the action, and then the scope would sit. It would ride on the side of the action, more or less. It wouldn't be right on top like a traditional. It is off a little bit. There's also a mount out there. It's just a single bar, just comes right up the side here. It'll this is where it will screw into, and they'll have 4 or 5 screw holes down in where it says Remington, and that's also an acceptable scope mount for this rifle as well. The peep sights, like I said, they're nice, and it really lends itself to the quickness and handiness of the rifle design. The caliber now, So at the time this came out, it was designed to compete with the 30-30 and similar lever action cartridges of the time. And these things are not, they're no slouch. I mean, this is probably the most popular deer cartridge ever. So there's nothing wrong with the 30-30 by any means. It does go through mild brush. It's not going to go through logs and heavily wooded areas. So its reputation as a brush buster has been embellished quite a bit over the years, but it definitely takes home venison for sure. And so when they brought out the 35 Remington, obviously it was meant to compete with a Winchester cartridge, but they simply widened the neck on there, gave you a fatter cartridge, a fatter bullet. If you look at the size of the actual shells, it's just a little bit wider all the way down the taper, but so you get a little bit more powder in there, but surprisingly not too much more power. So when Remington comes out with advertisements like this, that you've got enough gun for a massive grizzly bear. But as far as the actual ballistics, I'm not necessarily sure. I would feel comfortable, more comfortable with a 35 than I would with a 30-30. So talking about the ballistics here, 35 Remington, so this is a 200 grain bullet versus a 160 grain bullet. You have a muzzle velocity of 2,225 feet per second. This is Hornady data, by the way, so that would vary. Obviously for hand loader that would be different, and then the different manufacturers with different, well, the blunt nose bullet will definitely be different than the ballistic for an FTX bullet. But on average here, we're talking 2,225 feet per second and 2,198 feet of muzzle energy. So let's say 2,200 feet of energy at the muzzle. When you get out to 100 yards, 1,963 feet per second and 1,711 pound-foot of energy. So you're losing about 500 pounds of energy in 100 yards. So that's quite a substantial drop in energy on the 35 Remington. So a ballistic gem, it is not. When you compare that to the 30-30, you have 2,500 feet per second and 2,046 pound-foot energy. At 100 yards, you're down to 2,150 feet per second and 1,643 feet per second. So that's almost exactly 400 pound-foot less. So they both drop off substantially at that 100 yard mark. But 1,711 foot-pounds of energy at 100 yards and 1,643. That's 75. So that is a decent amount of energy that between the two that you're losing. To say that you would be in this situation here facing a grizzly bear and that it would notice 75 foot-pounds in this particular numerical range, I'm not necessarily sure that's an accurate representation of what would really happen there. But ballistically speaking, when you go out to 300 yards, now these are not 300 yard cartridges, but at 300 yards with a 200 yard zero, the 35 Remington will drop 17.5 inches, and the 30-30 will only drop 12.1 inches. So that extra weight is going to make it tank a lot faster than the 30-30. So, and you still have over 1,000 foot-pounds of energy with the 30-30 at 300 yards. So if you did have an accurate lever gun with a scope, you could potentially ethically take deer up to 300 yards with that, at least with a Hornady FTX bullet. The competition here was really just to try to steal business away from the lever guns. Let sporting people understand that you could get similar ballistics with a different type of a cartridge, a different style cartridge, in a faster action that you didn't need to manually load. And don't forget, this was turn of the century technology here. So we still had frontier wars, right? There were still cowboys and Indians, and there were still people taking over homesteads. There was still violence out west, right? Where this would be a good option to to be able to defend your property or your life, right? Especially with a stripper clip, much easier than loading a tubular magazine on a lever gun. But what really changed this was when they upgraded this rifle to the Model 81 Woodsmaster in the 1930s. Not only did they make it slightly more robust, they added a really nice looking pistol grip stock on here, so you could get your hand in there rather than having to have it back. You could have it out a little bit, so it was much more comfortable. Some say it is much more comfortable. I find this just fine. But what they did was they took a note from Arthur Savage's playbook in the model 1899, and they put that 300 Savage in there, and that was a real game changer. That's a legitimate bona fide 300-yard deer cartridge for a lever gun and for this semi-auto. The Spire Point from Arthur Savage, that was really the revolution. And then the Model 99 lever gun had a internal rotary magazine, so you could use the pointed tips, because they sat on each other in the magazine, and they would just rotate around. Whereas in a lever gun, you have them hitting the primer, and that's why they didn't have tip bullets for lever actions. That's why they were all flat-nosed, because the recoil of the rifle, it was much less likely. Excuse me. It was much less likely that you would have an ignition of primers in your magazine tube with a flat nose. So that was also another great advantage of the Model 8, was it took advantage of, could take advantage anyway, of Spire Point bullet technology at the time and then going forward. But when the Model 81 was redesigned and brought out that 300 Savage, that was a game changer. So the 300 Savage has a velocity 2,740 feet per second and muzzle energy at 2,500. So that destroys the other two big time. That's 300 more pound-foot energy than the 35 Remington right off the bat. It only drops 8 inches at 300 yards. So whereas those two, the 35 and the 30, you definitely need some kind of a scope system when you get out to distances. But yeah, 100 yards, 2,500 feet per second, 2,081 foot-pounds of energy. 300 yards, you're still over 2,000 foot per second of muzzle velocity, and just shy of 1,500 pound-foot energy. So it's a really good cartridge, and it kept the rifle alive for an additional 15 or so years, really, before they transitioned out of this model, because this had a good 50-year lifespan from conception to moving on to the next design. But what this really gave birth to, once it pioneered, the 300 Savage and others, we'd have the Browning automatic rifle, of course. Our modern Browning automatic rifles obviously all shoot Spire Points and have the magazine similar in design to the Model 8. Nonetheless, this definitely gave birth to a lot of ingenuity in the firearm industry that's benefited sportsmen greatly. So not only do I recommend this as part of just the average collection, so you can have a piece of history and know where the modern sporting rifle has come from, but it's also great to get these suckers back out in the woods. They function, they're accurate. It's a 2-inch gun at 100 yards. It's about a 3-inch at 200 yards, at least this particular one. So, there's no reason that you should be leaving these at home. Knowing where we came from, I feel, is important to know where we're going, where we are today. I wanted to give you my few cents here on the Remington Model 8 and 81. I think they're fantastic for what they were designed for. You can find one for a good value. They're very reliable. They've stood the test of time. The design is still used in our modern weapon designs. They are accurate enough for deer hunting, and just a lot of fun to shoot. So I'd give it a shot. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my spiel today, and enjoy yourself, shoot often, and be safe. Thank you.